Our farm was out in the boondocks.
It's a rural farming town.
He loved his fishing. He loved hunting.
But when it came to romance, he never quite hit the target.
He just couldn't find the right person.
He'd been married and divorced 3 times.
And he would never get another chance.
This man was murdered in his bed.
Shot with a shotgun at close range.
It was execution style.
Was it simply a robbery gone horribly wrong?
In a rural area, people don't lock their front door.
But why would they have targeted my brother out of the blue? Didn't make any sense.
Or was it all part of an elaborate plot?
Whoever did this did not put it on me.
Atchison is a pretty small town compared to Kansas City, mostly a farming, rural area.
People know their neighbors and are involved with what's going on around them and, try and look out for each other.
But this spring morning, one Atchison woman is looking for her son, 38-year-old Kurt Boldridge.
Kurt told his family that he was going on a fishing trip the previous weekend, but his mom hadn't heard from him since.
It wasn't normal for her to not hear from him, so she was very concerned for his safety. She called police to do a welfare check.
Please, I'm really worried about him.
I remember it plainly as day. We got the radio dispatch for a check the welfare, and we all headed that way. Everybody knew the Boldridge family.
When officers showed up, everything looked normal. They knock, they try and get inside.
Kurt, you in there?
The door is locked, and there's no answer.
They did not have a key, so they found a window and they broke it out so they could get inside the house.
And when they get inside of his home, they realized that there was a problem.
There was a huge amount of flies in the house.
But the flies weren't the worst of it.
Something's not right here, man.
There was a distinct smell of death.
It's not a smell that people forget.
Kurt Boldridge was a country boy at heart.
Mom and Dad were from Atchison, but our farm was located about 30 miles west, out in the country. So he loved his fishing. He loved hunting.
And Kurt was always on the hunt for a good time.
If we decided we were going to go fishing one day, even if it was just a hunting trip, he would make it so much fun that you didn't care if you got to shoot at anything or not, because you'd just be sitting there cracking up.
He was just kind of the life of the party and just like it's fun to be around.
Kurt married his high school sweetheart after graduation, but it didn't last.
They were married for a few years before they got divorced.
Then, after his marriage fell apart, Kurt moved into town and took a job at the local steel mill.
He started working at the Atchison foundry.
The money was good, but that wasn't the only benefit of moving to town.
You would see him in the club on Friday night. If there was fun to be had, Kurt would be the one to get it started.
How y'all doing tonight?
He had a stereo system, and people would go and DJ parties and stuff like that.
That's how, in 1984, Kurt met Lisa Turpin.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm Kurt.
I'm Lisa. Do you take requests?
Whatever you want, the answer is yes.
Lisa and Kurt met in their early 20s.
She was a farm girl from just across the river in Missouri, but ended up in Atchison looking for a little bit more excitement.
Lisa was a very free spirit, just a party girl.
What are you doing after this?
Like I said, whatever you want.
It very quickly became a whirlwind romance.
I can remember a few times they would come out to the house, and Lisa seemed to just be as nice and pretty a girl as you ever wanted to meet.
But then their whirlwind romance turned serious.
A few months after meeting, Lisa got pregnant.
After having their son, they got married within 4 months.
But like his first marriage, Kurt and Lisa's ended in divorce.
He was not lucky in love.
But while the divorce ended the marriage, it wasn't the end of Kurt and Lisa's relationship.
They were still kind of back and forth in one another's lives.
They did have a son together, so it was like from the time he met her, there was never a moment in it she wasn't involved.
They even dated one another on and off after the divorce.
But none of their attempts at reconciliation ever stuck. And by 1998, Kurt had met someone new. Her name was Julie Wilson.
Julie was the ex-wife of Kurt's friend, Mr. Wilson. And when Mr. Wilson went to prison, Julie and Kurt got a lot closer. Mr. Boldridge was a stand-up guy, so he stepped in and he helped out.
Kurt would take the couple's son fishing and hunting.
You're such a lifesaver. He's really been missing his dad, so this is going to mean a lot to him.
Yeah, of course. Anything you need, just let me know.
He just wanted to kind of be that father figure for that child while his friend was gone. But, you know, when you spend a lot of time with people, feelings do start to develop.
Those feelings of closeness eventually blossomed into a full-fledged romance.
They eventually ended up getting married while Mr. Wilson was still in prison.
Kurt's family was happy for him.
I did not know her before he and her got together, but I was all thumbs up for them.
But for Kurt, the third time still wasn't the charm.
They were married for about a year. It was very short-lived. He just couldn't find the right person to kind of help make his happily ever after dream come true.
So Kurt decided to take a break from love and put that energy into himself.
He bought a piece of property and started construction on his own house.
And then look at this.
He was a carpenter, he was a painter.
I can put the DJ stuff here. We can put the grill right here, and the kids, whenever they come, go right there.
Man, you did all of this?
Well, yeah.
I am proud of you, man. This is gorgeous.
It was going to be his little piece of paradise.
But now, after Kurt's family has lost contact with him for several days, sheriff's deputies have forced entry into the house and been met with an overwhelming stench of decay.
Something's not right here, man. It's pretty obvious to everybody that there's a deceased person.
We need some gloves on.
It was a death that had apparently been there for a while.
I need some air.
One person even had to step out of the house because of just the strength of the scent.
Tracing the smell to the bedroom, the remaining deputy locates the source of the odor.
They found the body laying in bed.
His body was underneath a blue comforter.
He had been shot in the head.
After his third divorce, Kurt Boldridge was taking a little time to himself.
He was ready to just kind of live his own life.
And then look at this.
He built his own home and was getting back to his rural roots.
We can put the grill right here.
That took him away from the real world, so to speak.
But now a sheriff's deputy has found a dead man inside the house that Kurt built.
He'd been shot at close range with a shotgun.
He was laying in bed in a pool of blood.
There was blood spatter on the headboard, which indicated that he was shot in that location.
The body had actually been decomposing for at least a week.
And when the homicide detectives arrive on the scene, one of them confirms that the dead man is indeed Kurt.
I knew the victim very closely. He worked with my father and brother.
The detectives also determined that Kurt's death is a homicide.
If the weapon's absent, then you know that it was not a suicide. And a blanket had been placed over Mr. Boldridge post-mortem. That is, after he was shot, somebody covered him.
So they knew that they had a homicide investigation on their hands.
It was execution-style murder at close range.
Definitely shotgun.
Detectives believe the murder weapon was a 20-gauge shotgun.
Numerous shotgun shells on the dresser in the bedroom. There was, I believe, 2 boxes and 3 shells standing upright. Also, one of the deputies located a 20-gauge spent shotgun shell outside the back door of the residence, about 7 feet out from the door.
However, despite the number of 20-gauge shells in the house, detectives can't locate a gun to match.
Which suggests the killer may have taken a weapon with them.
But how the killer got in the house isn't clear.
There was no sign of forced entry.
Does that rule out a random intruder?
In a rural area, even today, oftentimes people don't lock their front door. Back in 2000, that was even more common. It could be that a random person came in and committed a homicide and then locked the door on their way out.
It's also unclear whether Kurt had been robbed.
They found his home to be disheveled.
But other than the shotgun, nothing of value appeared to be missing.
Hoping to find out who might have a score to settle with Kurt, the detectives turned to the dead man's family, who began gathering at the scene.
While police worked the scene, Kurt's mother had been getting the word out to everyone.
My mom was just distraught, crying, couldn't hardly breathe, couldn't hardly talk. And I said, well, you know, what the hell's wrong? And she said, I don't know how to tell you, but they just found Kurt. So from there, I hopped in the truck, went up to my brother's house.
And the family has no doubt who's to blame.
I said, she finally killed him, didn't she?
They immediately pointed fingers at his second wife, Lisa.
Man, ain't no doubt in my mind that Lisa's behind all of this.
Why do you say that?
Because their relationship was so toxic.
Their relationship was like oil and water, really. It just never mixed, never gelled well. There was always that explosive portion of it.
People in town knew it. All their close friends knew it.
Local law enforcement knew it too.
We answered a numerous amount of calls for domestic issues down at the house.
Despite that, the couple could never quite quit one another.
Even when they divorced or broke up, whatever, they were never apart because she would not allow them to be apart.
Had kind of an off and on relationship. She may move there for a while, then move out again.
His family had tried to shake him and let him know that Lisa is just not the right person for you.
We would ask him, what is wrong with you? Why can't you get away from this woman?
According to the family, the relationship drama was all Lisa's doing.
You would hear of her cutting tires, busting out car windows, marking cars, vehicles up with paint or scratching them down the side.
And she always came up with new ways to take her anger out on Kurt.
And it had escalated from maybe just popping a tire to literally trying to burn down a house.
And now Kurt's family is convinced that Lisa had taken her anger towards Kurt to the next level.
His family had no doubt in their mind that Lisa was the person who killed Kurt.
100%. There was no question in my mind.
That put her at the very top of the list of being a prime suspect.
When the detectives bring her in, Lisa admits that her relationship with Kurt had been chaotic.
I mean, I loved him. I'd never actually hurt him.
She denied all involvement.
However, she does say she knows someone who could be involved.
You guys should talk to Kirk Wilson.
Mr. Wilson was the man whose wife had left him for Kurt when he got locked up.
It was bound to bring about some sort of jealousy.
And according to Lisa, Kirk had just gotten out of prison.
According to Kurt Boldridge's ex-wife, Lisa, the man whose wife left him to marry Kurt has just been released from prison.
According to Lisa, she believed that he may be responsible for Kurt's murder.
His name is Kirk Wilson.
Mr. Wilson and Kurt had known each other for a long time.
He is also well known to local law enforcement.
Wilson used to be a very upstanding citizen in the community. He was a city superintendent for the city of Atchison.
But then he got hooked on drugs and turned to crime to feed his addiction.
He actually physically made his father go to a bank and withdraw, I believe it was around $6,000 for him. He went to prison for that.
But according to Lisa, the fact that Kirk Wilson is out of prison isn't the only reason she suspects he's Kurt's killer.
She says that hanging out one night, he came to her and let her know that he had a gun that he needed to dispose of.
Did he tell you why?
No, he just needed a ride, and I didn't ask any questions.
She says that she didn't ask any questions, but she went with him to dispose of the gun in the Missouri River.
But then I heard about Kurt, and I put two and two together.
What kind of gun was it?
It was a shotgun.
The detectives suspected that the murder weapon was a shotgun, a detail that the public had not been aware of yet.
Does that mean Lisa is telling the truth?
So why would Wilson kill Kurt?
I mean, he stole Julie from him.
She told to police the nature of Mr. Wilson's rocky relationship with Kurt, as Kurt ended up marrying Mr. Wilson's ex-wife.
They actually got married while he was in prison.
That can leave room for some hostility and some anger because I'm sure Kirk Wilson felt lines were crossed there.
It was an explosive situation.
And now that Wilson's out of prison, Lisa suspects he'd come for revenge.
But Wilson didn't tell you he killed Kurt, right?
No, but I bet he did, him and his buddies.
She told us names we should look at.
They are 32-year-old Johnny Goodpasture and 31-year-old Gary Skeen.
They were both friends of Mr. Wilson.
They're also well known to local law enforcement.
Johnny Goodpasture, he was always in the spotlight of being in crime in the community. Gary Skeen, he was another one that was always involved in a lot of crime.
So law enforcement weren't shocked or surprised that they may have been involved in this.
After talking to Lisa, the detectives decide to bring all three men in for questioning.
Law enforcement's going to have to figure out if they had an alibi, if they had a motive, if there was a reason for them to be implicated.
Detectives make little headway with Skeen or Wilson.
Gary Skeen, he lawyered up on us. And then Kirk Wilson was advised by his attorney not to talk to us, so we weren't able to get an interview with him.
However, despite his familiarity with the criminal justice system, Johnny Goodpasture does talk to detectives.
He denied all involvement.
He also agreed to take a polygraph, which he failed.
So we knew there's some information out there he wasn't telling us.
But the detectives are a long way from making any arrests.
Polygraph tests can't be introduced in court. So officers and law enforcement, they'll use it as a guide to see where they need to go. But it really isn't something that you can use to prove your case.
The forensics results from the crime scene don't give detectives much to work with either.
If we had sent all the evidence off to get it examined by the KBI, there was one item came back with Lisa's fingerprints on it, but we knew she was in the house, so she could have touched anything at any time. We didn't have the gun to go off of. We didn't have much.
To break the stalemate, detectives return to Lisa with a bold request.
They asked Lisa to call Kirk on a recorded line.
To the detective's surprise, Lisa agrees.
She tells Mr. Wilson that the detectives have been asking her questions about him.
They ran me through the ringer.
But if the detectives hoped Wilson would say something incriminating, they're disappointed.
Whoever did this, it's time to put it on me.
The phone call with Wilson a bust. The detectives are back to square one.
We just continued to gather evidence, try to find what we could.
But just as it looks like the investigation is going nowhere, they learned some explosive information.
We found out Lisa had called the Social Security office to inquire about death benefits for her son.
Considering Kurt was dead, that wouldn't have been suspicious if it weren't for one thing.
She did it before his body was found.
Detectives investigating the murder of Kurt Boldridge have learned that his ex-wife Lisa had recently looked into his death benefits.
A financial motive is very common in homicide cases. So if a potential suspect is found to have been making inquiries about the very thing that they would have benefited from, then that's highly suspicious.
It's even more suspicious when the inquiry is made before the murder occurs.
We know for a fact that she had made that phone call to Social Security before Kurt Boldridge was ever killed.
Why would you be asking about that unless she was involved?
Thinking they might have uncovered a motive for murder, the detectives follow up with the local Social Security office.
According to the clerk that spoke with Lisa, it was a fairly routine call.
She had reached out to see how much money and benefits her son would get in the event of Kurt's death.
But the clerk also tells him that it wasn't just Kurt's son who would benefit.
Since he was a minor and Lisa was his custodial parent, she would get the money until he turned 18.
Does that mean Lisa killed Kurt for the money? To detectives, it's beginning to look that way.
That's definitely going to be an important piece of circumstantial evidence. So law enforcement at that point is looking to corroborate or disprove that.
Detectives begin by heading to the spot where Lisa claims she'd taken Wilson to toss the shotgun.
Lisa told us that Kurt Wilson threw the gun in the river about a half mile up from Leavenworth.
It's hard to prove a murder without a murder weapon. So police definitely wanted to make sure that they found that.
We made numerous attempts with the Lee Summit dive team to retrieve the gun from the river.
But the exhaustive search fails.
The gun was never located.
Which leaves detectives wondering, was Lisa's story about Wilson even true in the first place?
When law enforcement's given alternative suspects by somebody, that could be a deflection, it could be, it wasn't me, but it was somebody else.
Wilson's criminal record and history with Kurt also made him an ideal scapegoat.
Maybe Wilson was telling the truth at that phone call the detectives were listening to, when he told Lisa someone was trying to frame him for the murder.
That seems even more likely to detectives when Kurt's family brings them a series of audio tapes they've just discovered.
After you guys released the crime scene to us, we found these.
Oh, okay. What are these?
Kurt has been recording all of their fights.
Can we hang on to those?
Yeah, no problem.
Through those tapes, they were able to hear exactly what Kurt's family had been detailing for so long about the nature of their relationship.
A lot of it was having to do with them talking about the damage to the vehicle and stuff.
Are you gonna keep busting people's stuff up?
I didn't bust nobody.
She would deny it all. And, you know, every time he would accuse her of something, she'd just go off the deep end of screaming and yelling to him.
I'm sick. I am sick of this mother.
And really kind of showcase the nature of their relationship and the volatility of it, especially from Lisa's end.
You're very dangerous.
Like a stick of dynamite with a fuse lit.
She finally told him in so many words that she would hurt him.
You double-crossed me again, and your time is ticking.
When you're caught on audio saying these things, it's really hard to dispute that this is not action that you plan to take.
After listening to the tapes, detectives bring Lisa back for another round of questioning.
All right, Lisa, we heard the tapes. We heard how you talked to Kurt. Why don't you just tell us what happened?
You're not listening to me. I've already told you who I thought did it.
She really took it above and beyond to say it was not me, it was these three guys, Kurt Wilson and his two friends.
Like, if you want me to wear a wire again, I will, but...
How about you just take a polygraph instead?
Sure?
Okay, yeah.
Lisa says she has nothing to hide, but the polygraph says different.
She did end up failing all of the questions on the test.
Like Johnny Goodpasture, the failed polygraph alone isn't enough to place Lisa under arrest.
But unlike Johnny, the polygraph isn't all the detectives have on her.
Lisa had been violent towards Mr. Boldridge in the past.
There were also inquiries about the Social Security benefits and the audio tapes of Lisa threatening Kurt's life.
One piece of circumstantial evidence stacked on another, and you add in a strong financial motive, then you really start to build a credible suspect. And it appears that all the signs were pointing towards Lisa.
The decision was made by Assistant County Attorney at that time to move forward and get an arrest warrant for Lisa Boldridge.
On June 29, 2000, Lisa Boldridge is booked into the Atchison County Jail.
When the polygraph was over, we told her she was under arrest for first-degree murder.
Stand up.
Lisa's left speechless at the news.
She was a very controlling type of individual, thinking that she was in control of what was going to happen. And now that she was going to go to jail, I mean, she was just stunned because she had no idea that we was going to arrest her.
For Kurt's family, the arrest is a confirmation of what they suspected all along.
Everybody breathed a sigh of relief. I believe the whole community was like, oh, they finally got her.
But had they arrested the right person? More than a month after Lisa's arrest, detectives get a surprise visit from a woman named Tina Wilson.
Tina had recently married Kirk Wilson, the man Lisa said had killed Kurt.
And she has quite a story for the detectives.
Apparently, Mr. Wilson and his friend Johnny Goodpasture recently had a falling out.
Kirk Wilson accused Johnny Goodpasture of having an affair with his wife.
And according to Tina, Wilson had also threatened Johnny.
And he said, I'm gonna kill you, like I killed Kurt.
Get out of here!
More than a month after detectives arrested Lisa Boldridge for the murder of her ex-husband, his friend Kirk Wilson's wife has come forward claiming the ex-con is telling people he killed Kurt.
Mr. Wilson is who Lisa had accused of being Kurt's killer.
Was it possible Lisa had been telling the truth all along?
You know, good investigators follow the evidence wherever it leads.
Detectives' first question for Tina is what led to the falling out and the subsequent threat against Johnny's life.
He thought we were sleeping together.
He was over at the house and Kirk came home and was very upset with Johnny Goodpasture.
Hey, what is going on here? What are y'all doing behind my back? You're supposed to be my friend.
Wilson's wife denied that there was anything going on between her and Johnny.
But that's not what Wilson thought.
I'm gonna kill you!
Johnny actually jumped out the window of the house to get away.
Yeah, you better run. Get out of here!
Wilson threatened to kill him, just like he killed Kurt.
According to Tina, he said the same to her.
There was an altercation between the two of them where he threatened her.
I'm gonna kill you too, and get away with it.
Tina felt afraid and out of fear came forward with that information.
Detectives suspect she's telling the truth.
Wilson threatening Johnny for stealing his girl sounded a lot like what Lisa said was his motive for killing Kurt.
Detectives also suspect Johnny Goodpasture will now be willing to cooperate.
Johnny was arrested on unrelated drug charges.
It's not uncommon for people facing other charges to offer their services in other cases.
Hoping he'll be willing to talk, the detectives go to the jail and haul Johnny into the interview room.
And then they apply a little leverage.
We told Johnny Goodpasture that he was going to get charged with murder.
I told y'all I didn't kill him.
Well, then tell us who did.
Facing a possible murder charge, Johnny comes clean.
He told us that Gary Skeen was involved. He told us Kirk Wilson was involved. He told us Lisa Boldridge was involved.
Lisa was going on and on about Kurt. the way she did.
She was very belligerent, very manipulative.
What do you mean manipulative?
She said we should go over there and teach him a lesson.
Lisa was the ringleader of this whole thing.
The original plan was just to rough Mr. Boldridge up.
Johnny says that after a little goading by Lisa, they'd all gone over to Kurt's house.
She had a key to the house.
She let the 3 others inside.
So you thought you were just going to go over there and beat him up?
Yeah.
But according to Johnny, Lisa wanted more.
She wanted him dead.
Here.
There was a 20-gauge shotgun leaning against the wall. Lisa picked the shotgun up and just tossed it to Kirk Wilson.
So Wilson did it.
As far as I know.
Now, Johnny says he wasn't in the room when Kurt was killed.
But between his story and the evidence at the scene, the detectives have a pretty good idea what happened when Lisa and Wilson slipped into Kurt's bedroom.
We believe he was asleep in bed. Kirk Wilson held the gun about 18 inches from the side of his head and says, "Wake up," or something like that.
Then as soon as Kurt opened his eyes,
Wilson pulled the trigger and shot him.
Assuming Johnny's story is true, it gives detectives enough to charge Lisa's co-conspirator, Kirk Wilson, with murder.
She got these 3 guys together.
She tossed the shotgun to Kirk Wilson.
Lisa was the person who wanted Mr. Boldridge dead, and there was evidence that she manipulated other people to actually pull the trigger.
Detectives believe that Kirk Wilson was easily manipulated because he had his own reasons to want Kurt dead.
Only it wasn't the reason the detectives figured.
Wilson said Kurt had it coming.
On account of Kirk stealing his wife? Is that what you're saying?
No, because of what Kurt did to his son.
Johnny Goodpasture has just told the detectives investigating Kurt Boldridge's murder that Kurt's ex-wife Lisa was behind the crime.
He told everything that happened, that Lisa had a key and that she invited the 3 of them in, that she gave them the shotgun to be used.
Johnny also claims that it was Kurt's former friend, Kirk Wilson, who pulled the trigger.
but he says it wasn't because Kurt had married Wilson's wife while he was in prison.
So it wasn't jealousy?
No. Lisa told Wilson that Kurt had abused his son.
So that sent Mr. Wilson into a rage, and they hatched a plan to get revenge.
I didn't know he was going to kill him, though.
Johnny Goodpasture and Gary Skeen understood that they was going down to hurt Kurt Boldridge.
And Lisa also told them that Kurt kept drugs in the house.
So they went along for the chance to be able to just get some free drugs.
According to Johnny, that had turned out to be a lie.
What'd you do?
He had it coming. What about our payment?
There's nothing here. Let's go.
There were no drugs in the house.
But now the detectives need to determine if Johnny is telling them the truth.
He was dishonest with police on several instances, and he had his own incentives to provide information.
He tried to leverage the information that he knew about Kirk Boldridge's murder to actually lessen his time that he was facing for his drug charge.
So after Mr. Goodpasture's admission, police give him a polygraph test.
And this time, he passes it.
He was telling the truth.
The only thing the detectives can't corroborate is Lisa's claim that Kurt had abused his stepson.
Lisa just made all that story up just to really upset Kirk Wilson.
She fabricated those things to get those people to do what she didn't have the guts to do herself.
After hearing Johnny's confession, detectives arrest Kirk Wilson on murder charges.
They also arrest Gary Skeen, who accompanied Lisa, Wilson, and Johnny to Kurt's house that night.
We had all the subjects spread between Donovan County, Atchison County, and Leavenworth County in different jail cells, so they couldn't talk.
Which means that when Lisa goes on trial in January of 2001, Johnny Goodpasture is the only one of the conspirators who testifies against her.
The prosecutors laid out all the evidence before the judge. Lisa's long, turbulent relationship with Kurt, the threatening phone calls, and her inquiry about the death benefits.
Then they put Johnny Goodpasture on the stand to testify about how Lisa had manipulated Kirk Wilson into committing the crime.
During the trial, he said she was able to control and manipulate to get what she wanted by use of false allegations of abuse of a child.
The claims that she had made about what my brother had done never happened.
It shows how skilled she is in manipulating and masterminding.
When it's the defense's turn, Lisa's attorneys do their best to discredit Johnny's testimony.
He'd been dishonest with police. So the impeachment line is obviously, were you lying then? Are you lying now? Are you lying all the time?
The defense also suggests that while Lisa may have been at the house that night, she was just a bystander and never intended for Kurt to die.
What did you do?
He had it coming.
I believe wholeheartedly that she thought to the core that she was going to walk free.
But she's wrong.
She was convicted in a matter of hours over what testimony we put on.
The judge sentences Lisa to life in prison. But she will be eligible for parole after serving 25 years.
When she first comes up for parole, I imagine the parole board will still look at it carefully, and the family will have the right to send letters in, and the parole board will make its decision.
There is so much frustration. There is so much pent-up anger. There's so much hatred. I don't know how anyone could expect me or my family, if she gets released, to walk down any street and ever see that woman's face again, knowing what she done to my brother.
The other three conspirators are already out of prison.
Goodpasture got the lightest sentence, 24 months, because he, helped the police.
He pled guilty to burglary charges.
Gary Skeen also took a plea deal.
He got 14 years in prison.
And Kirk Wilson, who actually pulled the trigger, goes to trial and is found guilty of murder.
Kirk Wilson was actually given, I believe, 20 years in prison. He got out a little good time credit.
So Mr. Wilson was released on parole in 2019.
I've driven through these streets and I have seen Kurt Wilson's face, the man that has actually pulled the trigger on my brother. To not get out and retaliate against him is a pretty good exercise in self-control. But vengeance is mine, said the Lord. So I'm going to let him try to handle it his way.
But it will never make up for what Lisa did to Kurt.
Because of what Lisa did, his kid has been without a father for the last 25 years. A family has lost a person who can never be replaced.
Years later, it's still hard sitting here in this seat talking about my brother. That's the kind of impact that he left on pretty much everybody that he touched in life. He was like the good guy. He was an all-around good person. And, the old adage, only the good die young. He was a hell of a guy.
The chance.
Sandy was one of these once-in-a-lifetime storms.
One of the worst storms that has ever hit. It is chaos.
Everything was completely devastated.
I'm frantic because I'm not hearing anything.
This is Sean.
And that's when they uncovered his body.
It's a body over here.
Was he a victim of the storm?
He had been partially buried. There was a lot of flooding, a lot of debris.
Had he been killed in its chaotic aftermath?
Everything was off grid. Emergency services, police.
Conditions like that, people get very desperate.
You said you had something for us.
Or did the hurricane provide the perfect cover for a killer?
Yeah. There was a lot of tension in the home.
I'm a killer.
Jealousy can lead people to do ugly things,
Breaking every bone in his body. Something horrible happened inside of that apartment.
The evidence, it's there. You just have to find it.
October 31st, 2012. It's Halloween in Far Rockaway, New York, a seaside community in the New York City borough of Queens.
A lot of people have been attracted to the Rockaways because of the lovely beaches.
It really is a giant melting pot because of the mix of people.
But this Halloween, the residents of Far Rockaway aren't enjoying the beaches or greeting trick-or-treaters. They're struggling with the aftermath of the worst disaster to hit New York City since 9/11.
Hurricane Sandy was a very difficult time for us.
Gusts 60 to even 74 miles per hour.
The hurricane hit New York just 2 days earlier, on October 29th.
No one ever expected that they would get hit so hard.
The storm left dozens of people dead or injured, and many more missing or unable to contact their worried family and friends.
One of those worried family members is Baltimore resident Tracy Rucker Jones.
It is chaos along.
Her husband was in Far Rockaway at the time.
This city is basically underwater.
And as the storm had approached, Tracy had grown increasingly concerned about the safety of her husband, 32-year-old Sean Rucker.
We were talking back and forth on the phone. He had never been through a hurricane. So he's thinking it's just gonna be a really bad storm.
I know, babe, I know. But I'll be all right, babe. I'll make sure I check in every few hours.
Okay.
But when the storm made landfall, Sean realized how wrong he'd been.
He's like, babe, this is bad.
And then, silence.
This is Sean.
I'm frantic at this point.
Gusts 60 to even 74 miles per hour.
This is Sean. Leave a message.
Hurricane Sandy wasn't the first storm Baltimore native Sean Rucker had to weather in his life.
When he was young, his mother passed away from cancer, and it really devastated him.
Sean wasn't bitter about her loss, though. Instead, it gave him a greater appreciation for those around him.
I think the loss of his mom at an early age increased his love for people.
He put a lot of energy into giving back to the community. That's how he redirected all of the grief.
But it wasn't until he met Tracy, who lived in South Carolina,
Hello.
that he filled the void in his heart.
How are you?
We shared mutual friends, and we had a group trip we did once a year, and pretty much each friend would arrange and set the trip up. So when it became my time, I had everyone come down here, and he arrived first, so he had to spend the most time with me. And in that time, I guess something developed.
And you know, we've never really hung out one-on-one before.
Yeah, maybe we should do it more often.
And that became the spark that got us talking on the phone, talking outside of the group.
Soon they were dating long distance.
They made a lot of trips to visit each other.
He was genuine. What he presented to you was who he was. And it made me look at him and say, this is really a true gentleman.
And And then Sean surprised Tracy by taking their relationship to the next level.
That Christmas, we drove to New York. He had planned the trip, and he's like, put on something dressy. And I saw all of my friends, everyone's dressed. And he's like, I was wondering, what are you doing for the rest of your life?
But just when it looked like Sean and Tracy had found happily ever after, fate intervened.
He was working at the airport in Maryland, and he had a very bad fall.
He had to go on disability.
But he didn't like being idle.
He wanted to be able to support his family.
He wanted to do more, and that's what led him to connect with some of his friends in New York.
They've been telling me about a program with computers.
His ultimate passion was computers and technology.
But I'd have to move to New York.
He wanted to be a graphic artist.
I think you should do it.
I said, Sean, I stand behind you.
By September of 2012, Sean had found an affordable place to live in Far Rockaway.
What's up, Sean?
Hey.
He was sharing a small apartment with 2 roommates, one of whom had a young son.
This was a space for Sean to stay while he was pursuing his dreams in the city.
One of the worst storms that has ever hit. It is chaos.
But now, after Hurricane Sandy has battered Far Rockaway and the rest of New York, those dreams are in doubt.
Sean's wife, Tracy, had been desperately trying to reach him.
I was messaging him on all outlets that we have.
Finally, she calls the police in New York.
911 emergency. I want to report my husband missing. I'm really worried something happened.
She was hoping that someone would investigate and give her some answers.
But she hoped in vain.
The police were overwhelmed.
Whole neighborhoods were still flooded. There were thousands of people displaced.
There were so many calls to police reporting people missing.
About all the police could do was add Sean's name to the list.
And I'm waiting to hear anything. And the days seem like years.
It's not until November 15th, 2 weeks after the hurricane hit New York, that there's anything to report. That morning, 2 city employees are working along the water's edge.
They were cleaning up the beach.
It was under tons and tons of debris.
And as they work, one of them notices something else among the wreckage.
Hey, man, come here, come here.
This isn't just some debris.
It's a body over here. What? Bro, call somebody right now.
Wreckage handler. 32-year-old Sean Rucker moved to New York to pursue a career in graphic design.
Sean just loved New York. We would go throughout our years of dating.
And he did spend the last month living in Far Rockaway on Long Island.
But when Hurricane Sandy bludgeoned New York City, the beachfront community had borne the brunt.
The storm surge came right into and on top of Rockaway.
And now, cleanup crews have found what appears to be a man's body buried on the beach.
Hey, man, come here, come here.
When the city workers come across the body, only the hand and the back was exposed.
Bro, call somebody right now. Yes, call somebody right now.
The cleanup crew immediately called the police.
Yeah, we found a body, man. Let's see somebody as soon as possible.
When police arrive at the scene, their first thought is that another victim of the storm had washed up on the beach.
I need a corner in my location.
The waves were about 12 feet high, and so it was very possible that someone could have gotten covered up by the sand.
But when the coroner begins to remove the body, it's soon evident the hurricane hadn't killed him.
His arms were tied with what seemed to be a bed sheet.
His legs are partially encased in a garbage bag.
This wasn't just an accident.
Hey, guys.
The man had been murdered brutally.
We need to get major crimes out here.
There's significant blunt force trauma to his head and stab wounds on the body.
And one of the victim's legs was all but severed.
For the moment, police have no idea who killed the man or when.
I need major crimes in my location.
Being that it was cold weather, decomposition had slowed down quite a bit.
Hoping to uncover the dead man's name, detectives take fingerprints from the body.
The first step in a homicide is identifying the victim.
This has a positive ID.
When they ran the fingerprints, they ended up getting a hit on a Baltimore man.
His name was Sean Rucker.
Sean's wife had reported him missing.
At this point, cops realized this was the same man that they received a phone call for a few days prior.
Detectives contact Tracy Rucker to make the official notification.
Hey, this is Tracy. I have some bad news for you. I think we found Sean.
The news that Sean had been murdered took her completely by surprise.
It's like, oh my gosh, someone tried to rob him. That's what I was thinking. Because, you know, he wasn't a street person. So it would be highly easy for him to fall into the wrong group of people.
Tracy isn't sure who those people might be, but she gives the detectives a place to start.
She gave them the address where he was residing and the people that he was residing with.
One of the names that Tracy gave cops was Alicia Stewart.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
While Sean's wife struggles to process the news that her husband is dead, the detectives follow up with Alicia Stewart, the woman renting Sean a room.
When they contacted Alicia, she was shocked and she agreed to come in to answer some questions.
I just still can't believe it.
We're just trying to figure out what happened, so we appreciate you coming in to talk with us.
The detectives start by asking Alicia how she'd met Sean.
It was online. He was looking to come to New York and needed a place to stay.
Alicia said she shared the apartment with her friend Monique and Monique's 2-year-old son.
Alicia says the arrangement worked well. At first.
What's up, Sean?
Hey.
It was great having Sean. He was responsible. He helped out around the house.
But Alicia says things got more complicated when her new boyfriend, 39-year-old Thyron Acock, moved in a week before the hurricane hit.
What do you mean complicated?
Like we were all stacked on top of each other.
And it caused a lot of tension around the house.
And then the hurricane made landfall.
On top of 4 adults and a child, there's no heat, no electricity. It just made tensions even worse.
Finally, a week after the hurricane hit, the weather had cleared enough that they could safely leave the apartment.
Alicia and Monique decided, let's just get out of the house.
Took the baby to the park.
They left both Thyron and Sean in the home together.
Alicia said they spent about an hour in the park.
Hey.
Hey.
Where's Sean?
When she got back, Sean was no longer there.
Do you know where he went?
I asked Thyron, but he didn't know either.
All he said was, Sean packed up all his stuff and left.
Where you going? I just gotta get out of here.
He just decided to up and leave.
Hey, detectives, this has a positive ID.
Detectives investigating the murder of 32-year-old Sean Rucker have learned that there was trouble in the tiny apartment he shared with Alicia Stewart, Monique Jeffries, and Monique's young son.
Alicia said that things became pretty tense when her new boyfriend, Thyron, moved in with them.
Thyron did not like Sean at all, and he made it very known.
And in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, Sean had disappeared from the apartment.
Yeah, me and Monique took the baby to the park. When we got back, Sean was gone. Where's Sean?
Alicia asks Thyron what happened, and he says that all he knew was that Sean packed up his things and he was out of there.
Did you believe him?
Who, Thyron? Yeah.
She said the house was crowded. They had no electricity. It's pretty reasonable that maybe Sean just left.
One thing appears certain to detectives, though. Sean hadn't gotten far.
The beach where the police found his body was only a few blocks from the apartment.
Maybe something happened to him when he wandered out in the street. Conditions like that, people get very desperate.
Had Sean, wandering the streets alone, fallen prey to the chaos and the hurricane's aftermath?
It makes him a target.
Alicia says that she left too, not long after Sean had moved out.
The conditions in the house had become so bad, they couldn't stay there anymore.
Alicia tells investigators that her, Monique, and her son went to stay with her sister for a few days. She also says that Thyron went with them, but he only stayed for a short while.
Then, after a few days at her sister's house, Alicia and Monique got a hotel room.
Thank you for coming in. I'll show you out.
Looking to confirm Alicia's account of Sean's disappearance, the detectives follow up with her roommate, Monique Jeffries.
She corroborates Alicia's story that they went out for a little bit, came back, and Sean was gone.
Thank you.
But what happened between Sean and Thyron in the hour they were alone together in the apartment remains a mystery.
Was there possibly more to it than Thyron had let on?
Detectives bring Thyron in for questioning.
He admits that things were tense from the start between him and Sean.
He tells detectives he just never got along with Sean, that he did not like the way that Sean would speak to Alicia, that he was rude.
That made you mad?
Yeah. I told him I didn't like him talking to my girl like that.
Did you do more than tell him?
Detectives asked Thyron if things had ever got physical between him and Sean, and he says no.
But I wish he would have started something.
Why is that?
Because I would have beat the hell out of him.
But you didn't?
No.
When they asked Thyron about the day Sean disappeared, he says he's not entirely sure what really happened. All he knows is that Sean packed up all his stuff and left.
And you didn't think that was odd?
I was just happy to see him go.
Thyron says he and the others had abandoned the apartment soon after Sean.
They all went to Alicia's sister's house to stay with her, but he didn't stay long because he and Alicia's sister do not get along.
When the detectives follow up with Alicia's sister, she confirms everyone's account of the timeline.
Hello.
Alicia, Monique, and Thyron all came to stay with her on November 7th.
She also confirms that she and Thyron didn't get along.
Why is that?
Because he was always rude to Alicia.
Always talking down on her, arguing with her about every little thing.
It was almost exactly what Thyron had said about Sean.
Alicia's sister also tells detectives that Thyron didn't just leave.
She pretty much kicked him out.
You were glad to see him go.
Yeah, that guy was trouble.
She said, I didn't feel safe with him here.
But then she says something that really grabs the detectives' attention.
Alicia's sister told them she'd asked him to leave because
Rucker's murder had begun to suspect that Thyron Aycock may have had something to do with his death.
Thyron had recently moved into the apartment that Sean shared with a woman named Alicia Stewart and her friend Monique Jeffries.
From Thyron saying that he would have gotten violent with Sean if he had the opportunity. And also from Alicia's sister, who says that he threatened her. Police are starting to paint a picture about who Thyron is.
At that point, the detectives said, we need to look into this.
They start by pulling his arrest record.
He had 3 felonies and 23 misdemeanors.
This is a man that had a very violent history.
He's also the last person known to have seen Sean alive.
Thyron alleged that Sean just packed up and left.
But given Thyron's violent history and his animosity towards Sean, the detectives are left wondering, was Sean alive when he left?
Thyron Aycock did not like that this other guy was around.
When the detectives receive the results of Sean's autopsy, they point to a killer with a personal motive.
Sean had been bludgeoned numerous times.
The medical examiner believed that the trauma wounds came from a hammer.
Sean had also suffered multiple stab wounds.
Whoever did this definitely wanted this man to suffer.
The autopsy also reveals that the injury to Sean's thigh occurred post-mortem.
Somebody was trying to dismember his body.
There were saw marks on the bone.
But had Thyron done the cutting? Looking for the answer, the detectives get a warrant to search Alicia's apartment.
In the apartment, detectives discover a bunch of clothing and a knife with dry blood on it.
There's also a saw that looks to have some dried blood on it.
There was no sign of a hammer, which the medical examiner believed was the murder weapon.
However, the detectives do uncover one final piece of evidence that appears connected to the crime.
Detectives find a fitted sheet that matched the sheet that was found wrapped around Sean's arms when he was discovered.
While the crime scene tech bags up the knife, saw, and other items for forensic testing, the detectives conduct a canvass of the surrounding apartments.
But because of the aftermath of the hurricane, most of the apartments were empty.
However, detectives suspect they already know 2 people who heard or saw something.
Given the brutality of the attack and the attempt to dismember the body, the detectives didn't believe Thyron had time to clean up and move the body before Alicia and Monique got back from the park.
Suspecting Alicia and Monique no more than they're admitting, detectives bring both women back in for another round of questioning.
Detectives wanted to put a little bit of pressure on them.
But even when pressed by detectives, both women insisted they don't know what happened to Sean.
The detectives suspect both women are lying, a suspicion that only deepens when they receive the forensic results from the crime lab.
Forensics confirmed that the blood that was on the knife and the saw does belong to Sean.
But they're still no closer to finding Sean's killer.
They found all this evidence, but it only proved that Sean was killed in the apartment he was living in.
Despite that, the detectives remain convinced that Thyron killed Sean.
Unfortunately, they didn't have any hardcore evidence linked to Thyron.
They weren't able to arrest him.
By the end of 2013, the case goes cold.
It's frustrating when you know who's responsible and you just can't find the evidence. But that's what being a good police officer is. You have to find it.
Sean's wife, Tracy, is just as determined to bring his killer to justice.
I was keeping things in the loop, having petitions signed, having my friends contact the police department, put pressure on them.
The effort goes nowhere until 2019.
Investigators discovered that Thyron was in prison for an unrelated case.
He was about to get released.
So they figured they'd give a fresh look at the case.
They start by reaching out one more time to Alicia.
Being that Thyron's in jail, you kind of have leverage in terms of talking to Alicia because he can't retaliate.
She might give detectives a new story.
7 years after Sean's murder, the detectives give Alicia a call.
Hello?
I don't know if you remember me. I'm one of the detectives that worked on the murder of Sean Walker.
She is taken by surprise that this has resurfaced.
That happened so long ago. I thought it was over with.
But then it's the detectives' turn to be taken by surprise.
Is there a time we can meet?
She tells them that she may have something they might want.
And detectives believe killed Sean and buried his body on a Long Island beach sits in prison.
He was in jail for an unrelated charge.
And he's about to be released. But have the detectives found a way to keep him behind bars?
I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm one of the detectives working the murder of Sean Walker.
When the detectives reached out to Thyron's old girlfriend, she asked for a meeting.
I have something I want to show you.
She had something that they would be interested in.
The detectives arranged to meet Alicia the next day.
Alicia went down to the precinct and she had a brown paper bag with something in it.
You said you had something for us?
Yeah.
She pulled out this hammer.
The medical examiner suspected the killer had used a hammer to beat Sean to death.
Alicia tells investigators that this is the only hammer that was inside the house at that time.
There's something else I need to tell you.
However, the hammer isn't all that Alicia has for the investigators. She's also brought a new story.
It don't matter if you're married.
What are you talking about? I just
Sure,
look
you're looking at.
Alicia told investigators that actually Sean and Thyron had been in an argument before her and Monique had left to go to the park.
I got tired of listening to them argue, you know?
Sure.
She just told them, look, you need to just settle this.
When you got back, Sean wasn't there.
Yeah.
Alicia maintains that she doesn't know what happened to Sean, only that Sean was gone by the time she returned.
However, detectives suspect Alicia is still holding back.
They still doubted Thyron could have cleaned up the crime scene and disposed of the body in the short time Alicia and Monique had been at the park.
And if that's just the hammer that was in the house, why didn't they find it back in 2012?
Hoping to fill the gaps in Alicia's story, the detectives reach back out to Monique Jeffries, Alicia and Sean's other roommate.
Again, she basically corroborated what Alicia had already given them.
However, she also provides a significant new detail that Alicia didn't.
She does add that when they left,
You better back up.
one man had a knife in his hand and another had a hammer.
We're gonna settle this right now.
Monique tells investigators that she really doesn't remember who had the hammer or the knife, but she does remember one thing particularly.
Thyron did tell Sean that he was going to kill him.
But is it enough for an arrest?
They had to send the hammer to the lab for forensics testing. And they were able to confirm that the diameter of the hammer was consistent with Sean's wounds.
Despite that, the lab can't prove that the hammer was the murder weapon.
The lab was not able to detect any of Sean's blood or DNA on the hammer.
So the detectives bring Alicia back in and confront her about the hammer.
She swore it was legit.
And once again, Alicia gives them a new lead.
She says that they should speak to a woman named Danielle Ross.
Alicia tells investigators that Thyron admitted to Danielle that he had indeed killed Sean.
Hoping that Danielle could finally give them the break they need, detectives bring her in for an interview.
She corroborates Alicia's story and tells them that Thyron did confess to her that he killed Sean.
Confession from Thyron's mouth.
And since Thyron is still in jail on the unrelated charge, there may be a way to get it.
Prison phone calls are always recorded.
And he maintained contact with Danielle.
Soon after talking to Danielle, the detectives start monitoring Thyron's calls from jail.
And sure enough, he reaches out to Danielle.
Hey, D, how you doing?
How am I doing? How do you think I'm doing?
Danielle tells him that detectives have been reaching out to her about him and it's stressing her out.
You know, it makes me wonder what else you're capable of.
I'm capable of protecting the people I love.
Danielle replies to Thyron, really? Caving someone's head in with a hammer and stabbing them is protecting people?
Breaking every bone in his body?
Confronted about what he's done, Thyron doesn't exactly deny it.
He only told Danielle to stop exaggerating.
I didn't break every bone.
Thyron says that somebody must have did that after the fact.
NYPD detectives have Thyron Aycock on tape, essentially admitting that he murdered Sean Rucker 7 years earlier.
You know, it makes me wonder what else you're capable of.
Thyron was in jail on an unrelated charge, and his friend Danielle had called him and let him know the police had been asking her about Sean's murder.
On the recordings, they heard him basically admit to killing Sean.
He said it was because he thought that Sean and Alicia were messing around.
I still love her, you know.
You think she still loves you?
Danielle pushes further and asks Thyron, what will happen when Alicia puts you under the bus? And Thyron replies,
she can't.
Detectives aren't so sure. After listening to the jail calls, they bring Alicia back in for yet another round of questioning.
Daniel's comment about Alicia throwing Thyron under the bus sure sounded like she knew more about the murder than she'd admitted.
They asked Alicia over and over again, is there anything that we're missing?
I already told you everything that I know.
You sure? Monique told us that Sean and Thyron were fighting when you left the apartment.
Finally, Alicia caves to the pressure.
All right. There was a fight.
She wasn't quite sure which one had the knife and which one had the hammer, but she knew that something was going to go down.
She said when they got back from the park, she initially thought she'd been mistaken.
Where's Sean?
Thyron told her that Sean had left.
But as she soon discovered, that was a lie.
That night, Alicia and Thyron snuck into the bathroom to have sex. Because with so many people in the apartment, the bathroom was the only place with any privacy.
Wait, what's that smell? It was coming from the bathtub.
She pulled the shower curtain back and found Sean's body.
What did you do?
That got a little out of hand.
Out of hand? Out of hand?
Yeah.
You gotta get him out of here. Now.
She told Lisa, I was frantic, I didn't know what to do.
So she went back to the bedroom and left Thyron to deal with the body.
Eventually, he came up with a plan.
Later that night, while Alicia was laying in bed, she did hear the sound of a saw.
But dismembering the body wouldn't work.
He was going to get rid of it another way.
Alicia says Thyron took the stroller Monique had for her son, loaded the body onto it, and wheeled it out.
Did Thyron tell you where he was taking him?
I didn't want to know. I just wanted him gone. I'm scared.
Alicia also says she was afraid to tell anyone what had happened.
If Thyron was willing to kill someone in her apartment, what do you think he would have done to her?
But now, 7 years later, Alicia has finally given detectives everything they need.
With Alicia's statement and Thyron's confession, detectives executed an arrest warrant for Thyron.
He was the only one charged, though.
The district attorney granted Alicia and Danielle immunity in exchange for testimony against Thyron.
Thyron Aycock goes on trial for murder on February 3rd, 2022.
I honestly didn't think that resolution would be found in my lifetime. I never thought that I'd be sitting across from the man that took him away from me.
The prosecutors begin by explaining the tense dynamic inside Alicia's apartment in the days leading up to the murder.
The prosecutors allege that Thyron believed that something was going on between Sean and Alicia.
And after spending several days cooped up together on account of the hurricane, things have reached a boiling point.
Yo, I want you out of here.
I was here first.
I swear I'm gonna kill you.
Look! As the argument intensified, Alicia and Monique took her son to the park, telling Sean and Thyron things better be sorted out when they got back.
You heard her. We're gonna settle it right now.
You better back up.
The fight broke out as soon as the women left.
Evidence indicates that Thyron quickly got the upper hand.
One or two hits to the head, and Sean was on the ground.
Then Thyron grabbed the knife and finished what he'd started.
The prosecution's theory fit with the injuries Sean suffered.
Prosecutors contend that Thyron stashed Sean's body in the bathroom right after he killed him.
Alicia takes the stand and tells the jury that's where she found Sean's body later that night.
The prosecutors also had Danielle's testimony and the jail call she made with Thyron.
And when the jury returns with its verdict, there's no doubt that they believe Alicia and Danielle are telling the truth.
They find him guilty of second-degree murder.
Thyron is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
I would have wanted more, but I was grateful that Sean could receive some sort of justice.
At least now they have closure. They know that the person who murdered Sean Rucker is now in jail.
But even justice can't bring back a loving husband who, like so many others, followed his dream to New York City.
Her son didn't want for anything.
She was extremely loving and protective.
Moms and their sons, it's that special connection.
And then she met the man who made their family complete.
She wanted someone there for her son.
He became a father figure.
They fell in love and got engaged.
Would you please marry me?
Yes.
But they would never marry.
Her throat was slashed.
Blood is all over the place. She absolutely fought for her life. Please help!
Was it a robbery gone wrong?
You have a broken window.
It looked like a burglary.
Did she have a stalker?
Her tires had been slashed.
She would receive threatening text messages.
Someone was following her.
Or had she always known her killer's name?
The type of wounds she had were up close and personal.
If you are in a fight with someone, you're going to have some form of DNA underneath the fingernails.
She told us who did it.
October 14th, 2015. It's Wednesday afternoon in Hampton, Virginia, a hard-working city of 130,000, just across the water from the sprawling naval base of Norfolk and the bustling shipyards of Newport News.
Most all of the industry there is Navy, and people work at the naval shipyard. People help supply the naval shipyard. It's a very blue-collar area.
A lot of people migrate here. It's a good, wholesome place.
You have great school systems. It's a great place to raise a family.
At around 3:30 that afternoon, Angelina Williams' 16-year-old son returns home from school.
He's excited about a test he took that day.
He thought he had done really poorly on this test, but he actually got an A. And so he was really excited about his grade.
He couldn't wait for his mom to get home from work so he could tell her all about it.
But when he lets himself in the front door, he notices something unusual.
Mom? The door was unlocked.
Mom, you come home early?
He started looking for his mother, called out to her and didn't get any response.
Mom?
There was no sound in the house as well, so he went upstairs to look for his mom.
But just as he gets to the second floor, he stops.
Oh my God.
He saw a large amount of blood right at the top of the steps.
Nothing was more important to 46-year-old Angelina Williams than her son.
So how are things going with you and Christina?
She was a single mother. She had raised her son on her own.
She was extremely loving and protective of her son.
Their relationship was very close. And you know how that go with moms and their sons. It's that special connection.
To support her son, Angelina worked long hours at a local warehouse store.
She worked there for over 15 years.
She loved that job. The job loved her.
She was known by many of the customers that frequented the place.
And her coworkers had become her extended family.
They build up this close-knit bond just based on a sense of pride, a sense of camaraderie. They got together on weekends, they had fun.
They talked about everything, their children, the different challenges that they had in life.
She did have a village, a collection of people that you can go to.
Thanks to that support and the steady income her job provided, Angelina was able to raise her son in a stable and secure environment.
She was able to save up enough money when her son was in maybe the 7th grade or so. They got a townhouse.
He didn't want for anything, but Angelina worked very hard to provide that life for him.
But there was still one thing missing.
She's been a single parent for a while, and it's just been her and her son.
Until, in 2013, Angelina met Willie Smith.
It was a big step in the right direction because she was checking so many different boxes of her life. She had job stability, her son was doing good in school. So everything just started to line up.
They ended up moving in together.
Would you please marry me?
Of course.
They were together for about a year before they were engaged to be married.
He became a father figure to her son.
Oh, Willie.
You like it?
It's beautiful.
The type of mother that she was, she wanted someone there for her son.
More importantly, Angelina finally had someone of her own.
This is someone that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with.
Now she has this opportunity to feel special.
Everything aligned, everything was looking promising.
But now, Angelina's son has come home to find the front door of the family's Hampton townhouse unlocked.
Mom, you come home early?
And blood at the top of the stairs.
Oh my God.
Just imagine riding the bus home from school, being in school all day, getting a good grade, having a good time, to coming home, and now your whole world is shaking up.
And it's about to get far, far worse.
He made his way to his mom's bedroom, and there he found her.
Mom! Mom!
Her son found his mother in a pool of blood.
Please, no!
After years of raising her son alone, Angelina Williams had finally found a partner to make her family complete.
They were starting to build a life together.
They were engaged to be married.
Would you please marry me?
But now, Angelina's son has returned from school to find his mother lying in a pool of blood.
He was very distraught.
However, he is able to call 911.
The police eventually arrived.
But there's nothing they can do for Angelina.
She had been stabbed multiple times, and her throat was slashed.
Angelina was dead on the scene.
She deceased.
The news is more than her son can bear.
By the time the homicide detectives arrived on the scene, he had completely broken down.
Let us know what happened. While he was crying, medics were assisting me and calming him down.
Eventually, detectives decided to have him transported to the station so he could have more time to collect himself.
After seeing to Angelina's son, detectives turned their attention to the crime scene.
When I got to the top landing, I noticed a pool of blood. There was blood smears on the walls,
which suggests that there was some sort of struggle at the top of the steps.
But the struggle ended in the bedroom, where Angelina's son had found her body.
She was laying on her side with her left arm over her head.
Her stab wounds were in the upper area, like the neck, head area, which is a very vascular area, and so there would have been a whole lot of blood.
On her hands, she had very severe defensive wounds.
She was clearly fighting for her life.
Nearby, detectives find a knife that may have been used in the crime.
The top of the blade was missing. It had broken off.
Detectives also find a pair of box cutters.
One was open beside her, close proximity, had a lot of blood on it.
It looked like the killer might have initially attacked Angelina with the knife, and when the knife broke, switched to the box cutter.
But who was behind the vicious attack?
We were thinking it might have been a burglary.
When detectives make their way downstairs, there are clear signs of forced entry. A broken window next to the front door.
So it appeared to me at that point that whoever entered this residence came through that window.
It seems that the intruder broke in, thought the house was empty, and he headed upstairs.
But there was someone home.
Angelina must have heard the glass break and started down the stairs to investigate, and then met the intruder at the stairs.
That's when the attack began. He chased her into the bedroom, where he ended up stabbing her.
Then, leaving Angelina bleeding in the bedroom, the intruder fled out the front door.
Which would explain why her son found it unlocked when he came home.
However, other details around the townhouse argue against a burglary scenario.
Nothing looked disturbed, out of place.
Angelina's purse is still there. Other valuables are still there.
It's possible the assailant, after surprising and killing Angelina, just took off without taking anything.
Or were detectives dealing with a targeted attack?
The type of injuries she had were personal, very direct towards her upper body.
The assailant was intent on killing her.
Hoping for more information, police canvass the neighborhood. But neighbors have little to offer.
We'd like to ask you about your neighbors.
They didn't see anybody coming or going in the house. They don't really know anything.
Sorry, I don't.
Angie got along with everybody.
She just didn't really seem to have any enemies.
Her and Willie are such nice people.
Willie?
Yeah, her fiance.
The fact that Angelina has a fiance raises a new possibility for detectives.
It could be a domestic violence situation.
Do you know if there was any trouble between the two of them?
Not that I'm aware of.
The neighbors all agreed that Angelina, Willie, and her son, they were all great neighbors.
Still, the detectives do wonder where Willie is now.
Do you know how to get a hold of Willie?
No, I don't.
Hoping Angelina's son will know how to reach him, the detectives head down to the station to speak with the teenager.
I know this is hard, but we need to get a little information and it might be helpful for us.
In the interview, it was clear that Angelina's son was still distraught over his mother's death.
He got hysterical a couple times, wanting to know what happened to his mother. How could this happen? It was a bad nightmare to him.
That doesn't make any sense.
He was unsure why Mom was home that early during the day. Normally she's at work.
She didn't tell you she was coming home early?
I was trying to get some information on anybody that he might suspect had issues with his mother.
And the teenager may have an answer. Angelina's former fiance.
Angelina's son said that her and Willie had broke up.
He had been kicked out of the house for about 2 months prior.
They argued, but...
He mentioned that there were arguments.
They ever do more than argue? Not really.
But he does say that some strange things had recently started happening.
His mom was concerned that someone was following her.
Her tires had been slashed a week or so before this homicide.
He wasn't sure if it was somebody in the neighborhood or somebody from work.
She got concerned that somebody else might have been coming around, maybe stalking her, watching her from a distance.
He tells them that his mother may have had a stalker.
Her son said that not long ago, someone had slashed his mother's tires.
She was nervous, she was scared, she wasn't sure if somebody was following her.
And whoever it was knew where she lived.
It happened to her at home before she left for work.
She walked out that morning and her tires were flat.
She had no knowledge of who might have done it.
As far as her son knew, she did not report it to police.
However, the possibility that someone was stalking Angelina could explain how the murder occurred.
We believe that someone had been watching her and following her and was aware of her comings and her goings.
So the stalker would have known she was home alone and vulnerable.
But that still didn't explain why Angelina left work early that afternoon.
She normally got off of work at 4.
Mom, you come home early?
Her son had no idea why she had come home before him.
You didn't know she was coming home early? No.
Normally she's at work until after he gets home from school. So the detectives then went to Angie's job to try to figure out why she was home early.
At the warehouse store, Angelina's manager is stunned by the news that she's dead.
She's been killed?
She'd been an employee there for a number of years.
The manager also reveals why Angelina had gone home early that day.
Angelina had clocked out at 11 a.m. because she just wasn't feeling good.
But was she being followed? When the detectives checked the store's security footage, the results are inconclusive.
They did see her get in the car and proceed out the parking lot.
Angelina wasn't approached by anyone and she just pulled off.
But several cars did leave the parking lot around the same time she did.
With Angelina's job being such a busy place, it was very hard for them to determine if someone had followed her.
However, Angelina's manager is certain that whoever killed her wasn't someone from work.
Her manager said that everybody there loved her, and she had this bubbly, overflowing personality.
Several employees were a very long time good friends of hers.
They all cared about each other. They all loved each other. So they loved her as if that was their family member.
But could Angelina's manager reveal who was behind the attack?
You know, I was afraid this would happen.
And why's that?
We did find out from her coworkers that during conversations with Angelina, she was concerned about Willie.
Especially after he slashed her tires.
Willie did that?
Well, she wasn't sure, but we think so.
Instinctively, she thought immediately it was Willie. And so she shared that information with her colleagues.
According to her manager, Angelina's relationship with Willie had quickly turned contentious.
When he moved into her home, I think she began to see a little more of who he really was. He would be out all night. And so he was someone who would spend the night all night out of the house. And of course, wet women would want that. And so that would absolutely cause conflict and friction.
Where have you been?
Oh, none of your business. When confronted about the excessive drinking and confronted about the all-night partying or whatever he was doing, he became abusive.
Just got here. I don't want to hear all that. You know what? You do the dumbest stuff.
After this, she kicked him out of the residence.
And running your mouth all the time.
But he didn't stay gone.
When she kicked him out the house, the first time, he tried to romance her back and said that he would change. And so her being in love with him, she did. After 2 weeks, she gave him another chance and she allowed him to come back into the home.
According to her manager, Angelina soon regretted her decision.
He did not change. He was still that same mean-spirited person. And so she asked him to leave yet again, and he did.
It wasn't long after that someone slashed her tires.
Willie had also sent Angelina a series of angry texts.
What did they say?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
She did not go into details about the text messages, but she shared with them that he had texted her.
But according to what Angelina did tell her, whatever was in the text could not have been good.
She also shared with them that if anything happened to me, make sure you let the authorities know that Willie did it.
Okay. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Hoping to find out what Willie had said to scare Angelina so much, detectives returned to the station and subpoena her phone records.
The text messages are a very important piece of evidence here because these are statements specifically from the suspect.
Then, while waiting to hear back from Angelina's cell phone provider, detectives pull Willie's rap sheet.
What they discovered was alarming to them.
He had a violent past towards females.
He had served time in prison for shooting a woman.
But her ex-fiancé, Willie Smith, had done time for shooting a woman.
This was alarming to the detectives.
The charges stemmed from an incident that had happened 10 years earlier.
He and his wife at that time were in a domestic dispute.
He asked her to meet him at his relative's home in reference to giving her money for some type of business transaction. When she arrived at his aunt and uncle's home, he literally came out the house and he started shooting her in front of everyone in broad daylight. As he was shooting her, the uncle ran up to him trying to stop him. Willie Smith grabbed his uncle and threw him into a tree. His aunt then came out and she pleaded with him, and somehow they were able to get his wife into the house where she passed out and she woke up in a hospital.
By then, Willie was in jail. But his wife refused to cooperate with the prosecution.
Even though he was an extremely violent husband, She was of the mindset that she did not want her children to grow up without a father.
Prosecutors in a case like this are often hamstrung by the victim's willingness to testify.
Without his wife's cooperation, prosecutors were forced to cut a deal with Willie.
The only thing they could do to salvage the case was to plead the case down.
He pled guilty to malicious wounding.
Malicious wounding is a general intent crime. So I only have to show that that person assaulted someone, and as a result of that assault, that person suffered some type of wound.
He was sentenced to 6 years.
He was released in 2013.
Shortly after, he met Angie and began to start a life with her.
Willie's violent record convinces detectives they're on the right track. But it's not enough to charge him with murder.
It's a very circumstantial case because we didn't have any videos to show him walking in the door, walking out of the door. No eyewitnesses to tell us, hey, I saw him do this.
However, the record search did give them the grounds to bring him in.
Come to find out that he had an outstanding failure to appear warrant from York County.
Detectives also hope that forensics will give them more evidence to tie Willie to the murder.
When we did the autopsy, they clipped her nails, and when they clipped her nails, they sent it to the lab.
They hope to find Willie's DNA under her fingernails.
If you are in a fight with someone, and even if you have small fingernails, but you scratch that person and you are able to somehow get skin, you're going to have some form of DNA underneath those nails.
The autopsy also reveals the vicious nature of the crime.
The autopsy confirmed that she had at least 19 stab wounds.
She had a lot of defensive wounds on her body from the attack.
When they did the initial x-rays of her body, they located a broken off knife blade in her upper chest area.
She was stabbed with such force that the handle of the knife came off and was lodged in her.
The medical examiner was able to remove it and was able to match it with the knife that was found at the scene.
This was a crime of passion. It was very, very brutal.
Now all the detectives have to do is bring the man they believe responsible to justice.
While waiting for the DNA results from the autopsy, the detectives focus on finding Willie.
With the help of cell phone technology, detectives are hot on Willie's trail.
We did what they call a GPS coordinate with the phone company, and we were able to get indications that the phone was active.
Detectives head to the coordinates the phone company provides and locate Willie's vehicle.
Just parked behind a church, and this church was approximately a block away from where his mother actually lived.
When they approach, they find a man asleep in the driver's seat.
We woke him up and took him into custody.
He did have an outstanding warrant, so they were able to arrest him based on that warrant.
But when detectives get Willie into the interrogation room, he refuses to talk.
He said, I'm not saying anything until my lawyer's standing in front of me.
You'll still about anything?
Even though he had invoked his right to remain silent, Willie had plenty to tell detectives.
There was a cut on his forearm.
He clearly had been in a fight.
Finally sit down with her former fiance, Willie Smith. They're all but certain they found her killer.
The detectives noticed that he had a cut on his arm.
Don't worry about that. I got that from you guys arresting me.
He said it had happened when we were putting handcuffs on me. What's interesting with that was the handcuffs go down by the hand and the wrist. These marks were further up between the wrist and the elbow, so they looked like they were actually nail scratches.
We know that there was some type of physical altercation. How we know that is because she had defensive wounds on her body.
We'll get you a lawyer if you don't want to talk to us, but we're going to get DNA first.
Hoping to confirm that Angelina made the scratches on Willie's arm, the detectives obtain a sample of his DNA to compare with the samples the medical examiner took from under her fingernails.
Because they were fresh scratch wounds on the forearms of Willie Smith, we know that there was probably tissue and probably blood that was underneath the fingernails of Angelina. And so as a result of that, DNA will absolutely be present.
When they're finished with Willie, the detectives obtain a warrant to search Willie's mother's house.
That's where he's been staying, and detectives went out there to search for possibly any bloody clothes, any weapons.
They particularly wanted to be able to see whether this knife that was collected at the scene would have come potentially from the home.
The police don't find any bloody clothes.
However, in the kitchen, they did find a knife block.
Every knife was there except one.
But detectives believe they know where it is.
The knives were a match to the broken knife detectives had recovered from the crime scene, and the knife blade recovered during Angelina's autopsy.
They were all from the same manufacturer.
It gave us a huge piece of evidence because we were able to match that blade with the weapon that we believe was used to kill her. And that weapon was ultimately confirmed to be from the knife block that we retrieved from his mother's home.
As damning as the knife evidence is, the case against Willie gets even stronger when the detectives receive Angelina's phone records.
Going through text messages, they revealed that Willie did text her in about October saying that he wanted to meet up, he wanted to talk.
Angie refused, so Willie had turned on the charm.
Yet again, he was trying to convince Angelina that, hey, I changed, I want to be the man that you want me to be.
But Angie wasn't going to fall for that a second time.
Angie replied to him, I don't want to put myself through this again. We can be friends, but that's pretty much as far as we can go.
That's when Willie's texts turned more desperate.
He wasn't able to sleep, he wasn't able to eat. And this is a control tactic that most abusers use. He wanted Angie to see him in a state of desperation, so that way she'll be more easy and open to accepting his invitation.
It didn't work.
Angie stood her ground, was not interested in going beyond just friends.
Soon after that, he'd started stalking her.
When the tires got slashed, she told him that she was going to call the police.
And he told her, if you call the police, there are going to be consequences to that.
And then Angelina threatened to do something even worse than calling the police.
She said that she was going to call his mother.
He pleaded with her, hey, please don't tell my mom, she'll kick me out.
Angelina responded to Willie with one final text message.
Angie replied, I'm scared of you, Will.
Angelina must have been terrified. She had to have an inclination that he may have been capable of doing something to her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said, I'm scared of you.
Detectives suspect Angelina was right to be afraid of Willie. Because when the detectives get the results of the DNA testing back, they have definitive proof of her killer's identity.
She told us who did it.
Willie's DNA was, in fact, under her nails.
That directly places Willie at the crime scene.
Smith's DNA under Angelina Williams' fingernails, detectives believe they have definitive proof that the 49-year-old killed his former fiancée.
We were able to place Willie Smith at this crime scene based upon DNA evidence.
She had not been with him for 2 months. There would no longer be DNA under fingernails for any other purpose.
She absolutely fought for her life.
It's enough for the police and prosecutors to finally charge Willie, who was already in jail on an outstanding warrant.
We got the warrants for first-degree murder and breaking and entering with the intent to commit murder.
When Willie goes on trial on October 7th, 2019, Angelina's friends and family fill the courtroom.
Her brother, her family members, her mom, her dad, they were all there. Her colleagues, her co-workers, they showed up.
The community was very upset. They wanted to pay their respects, kind of wrap their arms around her son and, make sure that her son knows that she was loved.
In contrast, Willie's side of the courtroom is all but empty.
Not one person showed up with the exception of his mom. She came for a few minutes and then she eventually left. So his family knows that he is a very brutal, malicious person.
Willie's brutal nature is also the focus of the prosecution's opening statement.
This was a typical domestic violence motive. What the prosecutors believe happened was that Willie Smith committed the murder out of anger, vengeance, out of jealousy.
We believe that he was following her and that he was tracking her and that he was actually stalking her because on that particular day, she came home early. She wasn't feeling well. We believe that she got into the bed to lie down.
According to the prosecutors, Willie had broken in soon after.
We believe he entered into the home through a window pane that was broken out.
Inside, he'd made his way to the second floor, armed with the knife from his mother's kitchen.
It is clear what his intentions were that day. He was there to kill her.
Once he got upstairs, there was Angelina.
What I believe occurred is he initially encountered her and surprised her.
And that's when he attacked her with the knife.
Angelina tried to flee away from Willie. He chased her into the bedroom.
Once inside, the vicious attack continued.
We do know that at certain points during the encounter, she was able to fight back and she left some marks on his body, but he was still able to overpower her.
He ended up stabbing her 19 times.
He had stabbed her with such a level of force that the blade had broken.
All those things point to a very specific targeted anger.
And according to the prosecution, all the evidence points to Willie as Angelina's killer.
They had the text messages subpoenaed from Angelina's cell phone.
The knife blade left broken in her body was a match for the set in his mother's house.
Most of all, the crime lab had found Willie's DNA under her fingernails.
That was the crux of this case. The DNA from the nail clippings.
When it's the defense's turn, they do their best to raise reasonable doubt.
There was some unknown DNA that was found at the scene.
We don't know who that DNA belongs to, but the fact is that by finding someone else's DNA there in the house, that is an opportunity for the defense to latch on and argue, well, then someone else committed this offense.
Will it be enough to sway the jury? It takes only an hour for them to decide.
They found him guilty of both first-degree murder and breaking and entering with the intent to commit murder.
That unknown DNA was irrelevant.
That could have been a maintenance worker, it could have been a friend of hers, it could have been literally anybody. The most important DNA, though, is under the fingernails.
The DNA that was consistent with the crime and consistent with how Angelina died, all of that DNA pointed to Willie Smith.
The twin verdicts earned Willie 2 life sentences.
He got life for the murder. It was first-degree murder in Virginia. The maximum penalty for first-degree murder is life. He got life for the breaking and entering a residency with a weapon, which is a life penalty maximum. So he got 2 life terms.
But no amount of punishment can make up for the loss of Angelina.
Still was a tough pill to swallow for members of the community, her co-workers, being that she was so loving and nurturing and friendly.
Angelina should be remembered as a great mom, a great attribute to society, her co-workers, her neighborhood.
And even though she is no longer here, her legacy remains very much alive.
Angelina's son is thriving.
Cơ hội để tổ chức một tình huống phản công cho đội bóng. Thủ môn đã cản phá xuất sắc. Và kỳ vọng vô cùng hoàn hảo.
Một chân sút thượng hạng trong trận đấu ngày hôm nay. Bàn thắng quá hoàn hảo.
Bàn thắng đã tới sau pha điện bóng đơn giản từ tình huống cản phá trước đó của thủ môn. Vâng, tỷ số lúc này đang là 4-0. Một tình huống dứt điểm. Cú sút đưa bóng đi trúng cột.
Ném biên cho Manchester City.
Anh ấy đang chuẩn bị thực hiện pha tạt bóng.
Mark Brighton đã nổ súng, pha ghi bàn đẳng cấp.
Một tình huống ghi bàn rất ấn tượng của cầu thủ đó.
Đó là pha dàn xếp tạt bóng từ bên phía cánh trái hoàn hảo và bàn thắng đã được ghi. Đó là pha đánh đầu hoàn hảo, một bàn thắng tuyệt vời.
Họ đang dẫn trước với khoảng cách khá xa. Một tình huống dứt điểm, pha ghi bàn cực kỳ đẳng cấp.
Bàn thắng đã tới, thật sự đơn giản khi có tới 2 cầu thủ áp sát thủ môn.
Tỷ số lúc này đang là vô cùng cách biệt rồi. Rodrigo. Một tình huống phản công nhanh, một siêu phẩm đã được vẽ ra.
Đáng tiếc khi bàn thắng không được công nhận. Một tình huống việt vị.
Rodrigo. Đó là pha phản công. Một cú sút. Một bàn thắng tuyệt vời.
Đó là một chân sút đẳng cấp, một cơ hội không thể tuyệt vời hơn.
Đội bóng giành chiến thắng đã chơi áp đảo trong suốt thời gian đã qua với thế trận một chiều.
Tchouaméni.
Vinicius Junior.
Casemiro.
Đó là tình huống phân bóng lên cho thủ môn.
Christian Eriksen.